Morphogenics podcast is it's a podcast that interviews or talks with and has discussions with people in the agribusiness as well as the food industries. So it's our aim is to have discussions and interviews with people doing interesting things in those industries. So I'm very happy to have you as a guest today on the podcast. I wanted to find out from you if you could actually just explain to me a bit about the company as well as the history of the company. I know that you're in the water reclamation space. Is that correct?
Yes. I started the company 27 years ago. I was in the marine industry and I was doing various repairs to boats. Once one of the boats was painted outside the United States, and what that had to do, it had a very high lead content on the anti-fouling paint.
Right.
So when it hit the ground, it ran off into the river. And I found out really quick about wastewater, runoff, and I got schooled by the EPA. So I started playing with different materials to capture that water and filter it to be reused or put into the appropriate place. So fast forward 27 years, I went into the car wash business. I put these in for car wash, and then during 9/11, I manufactured wastewater containment recovery systems for hazmat showers used in various cleanups throughout the United States and the country. Okay. Now, 3 years ago, the market for indoor agriculture is really booming. Right. And I was trying to figure out how I could get in there, some way that I could capture the water. And a year ago, I went to a cannabis company and I toured their facility. And I thought I could capture a lot of the water from the runoff from them watering. What I found out is that how much cleaning they do in these places. Everything has to be cleaned to a surgical standard. Once they remove the trays from the room, they use an awful lot of water just cleaning this stuff. So I designed and installed systems that basically I've been using for the last 27 years and introduced them to their grow facilities. So every time they flip a room, they could move their tables out, they wash their tables, and then once they clean the room, they could introduce the stuff. So it's capturing a lot of water. Everybody's been very happy with it. Mm-hmm. So in contacts with guys that are doing the microgreens too. I have some proposals out for them right now because they have the same problem about cleaning all their equipment in the runoff.
Right. Okay. Right. What prompted you to go after the outdoor and indoor agriculture cannabis industries?
Well, it's such a big market, and I believe that it's going to blow up. Once it gets regulated by the federal level, I think you're going to see a lot of laws in there about the runoff water, about the recycling of it, and they're looking for the LEED standards, and it certainly fits this, that particular point. So, and let's just take for car washes industry. They use a lot of water too. Well, what's the towns and the municipalities are making them recycle X amount of gallons per water, what they're using in these facilities. And I think that's what's going to happen in the agricultural industry and the cannabis industry in whole. And they're going to say, you're using so much water. We want to see, number one, how much you can recycle on site, how much that you can get from various means like chillers, capturing from the roof, that they're going to have a quota that will have to be met.
I see. Okay. All right. So who's your client base at the moment? No.
I have two major grow houses that I'm working with right now, and then I deal with all the major rental car companies.
I beg your pardon?
Major rental car companies.
Oh,
is
right.
A big client, plus some grow houses that I'm working with now, some rental clients.
Right. Okay. So it's rental car companies and grow houses at the moment.
Yes. Yeah. And then, like I said, I just did a couple RFPs for some companies down in South Florida that are growing lettuce, microgreens.
Right.
That are doing a warehouse that want to clean their products too.
Okay. I understand. All right. And an ideal client, how big does an ideal client have to be considered a prospect?
Well, anybody who's looking for the containment and recovery, I can work with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I work for small guys to, you know, large manufacturers out in California. Someone who does trees is a huge nursery that's having the same problem.
Right.
That, you know, and they're a major player in the industry.
All right. Excellent.
Put some stuff in.
Okay. Okay.
But the big thing is anybody, because that what they're using, they can't have runoff into the environment, most likely. That has to be contained some way.
Mm.
So this is where we come in. And let's say a year ago, I was contacted by a company and I went out there and I toured their facility. They were under rapid expansion. So they were using one place, but that wasn't the place where they were going to do all the washing. So what we did is I put a temporary system in for them without penetrating the ground. We put all our equipment in, they're washing there, and then we just went back out there. The new facility's open, the new addition that where they're making for that area. So we moved the system over for them. So, you know, it leaves no environmental footprint and it has the ability to relocate. And they really like that aspect of it.
Okay. Excellent. Those two aspects, to reiterate, it was the fact that it doesn't leave an environmental footprint, and the other thing was?
It can be relocated.
Right. Okay. Okay. What else would you consider is a value add or a ISP selling aspect of your solution, besides those two?
Well, you're saving water, right? And there's a cost associated with that. And also, we're supplying them the non-skid work surface for their employees. So they're not actually standing in the water on the concrete. So you have the, you know, the OSHA requirement you're meeting. And then that you have the ability to move it instead of being stationary, I think is one of the big selling points. And either I could tie in, there's many ways that we could take the water from the roof to put into the system that they can reuse. And also, you know, the ability to relocate it, I think is the biggest.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Good. What do people misunderstand about your industry the most?
I think that they think that water is going to be around forever.
Hmm.
I think people just think like we can use water, and it's what's happening. It's the prices are rising for it. The quality of water is not as good. What these guys are seeing, you know, if they're taking wells out, they're going from a well to a reverse osmosis. You still have water that you have to get rid of. And what they're finding, what I'm seeing is that the containment and recovery aspect sort of comes at the back end of the build outs. You know, they're like, okay, we're putting in everything state of the art, but then you have to wash. Then they're like, okay, well, we don't have a wash area yet. So now they're saying, well, we have to have some way to wash this. And do we have enough room in the footprint? You know? So I think that's the big aspect of what I'm seeing.
Right, excellent. What would you say are the 5 biggest challenges you're facing in your role or business or projects right now, and how are you tackling it?
5 biggest. The supply chain is really hurting right now. Like if I need tanks for jobs, they're not readily available. By waiting, sometimes I'm out 15, 16 weeks. I have an inventory, but to keep the inventory running, and that's what I'm seeing. You know, I would say that's number 1 right now. Mm. Then everything else, it's just overcoming logistics to get to the job. So really, I don't think there's that. My biggest thing right now is product.
It's product.
Yeah, because of the supply chain.
Right. Okay. In terms of the industry, Al, what are the biggest challenges the industry or your industry is facing right now, and how are you tackling those?
I think what the industry is facing right now, it goes back to the supply chain. I think that's a big problem. Either for your permits, anybody's trying to get permits now, it's pushed back. It's really hard getting permits, and logistically getting stuff to the place. I think everybody in the industry is sort of facing that right now. And also employees is a big problem in the workforce.
Okay. And when it comes to employees, what type of employees would those be?
Well, the people that are on site, that are doing the physical labor. I was just at a place and they were telling me the COVID restrictions, that they're short staffed with everybody that's doing the washing, and just that. I'm seeing in the facility I went the other day, and I'm like, hey, has it affected you guys? He's like, oh yeah, we're about 60% staffed right now.
Oh, so okay. Understand. Okay. All right. What would you say, Al, is a common myth about your job or field or expertise?
A common myth? I think the common myth is that people think they can just let the water run off into any area. That maybe they know they're not supposed to do it, but they were turning a blind eye before, and now that you can't turn a blind eye. That is a serious issue in the industry. From the secondary containment for the pesticides or any chemicals that you have on site, and how you're capturing everything that's running off. It just can't run off into the storm sewer or to a tributary. So I think that's the common myth.
Okay. All right. Al, take me through a typical day. How does a typical day work for you? What happens?
Well, in a facility, usually what happens, like yesterday, I had a meeting at a grow facility that we walked the grow facility, and I gave them some ideas of how we could capture water that we could take off the roof to reuse into wash cycle, and where we were going to put the wash pad and how everything was going to be set up. That's pretty much my typical day in sales. I'm involved a lot right now in just getting the product in, sourcing some of the product, mainly my holding tanks, and then meetings in sales and physically looking at the sites to come up with solutions in the installations.
Okay. Al, what would prompt a sale to happen in your field? I mean, what has to happen? Is there a disaster or a problem, or what starts a chain reaction in the sales process for you?
Like I said before, I think the biggest thing is now they're realizing some of these places there's a big issue with cleaning, and they're using a lot of water. And if there's any way that they can capture that water to use it for a couple cycles, they're very receptive to take a look at it.
Right. Okay. So it comes down to reusing water that you'd otherwise throw away. Is that kind of the situation?
Yeah, without a doubt. And then compliance is a big issue. They know they have to be compliant. And the value, I think there's a serious value added service to it. Right.
Okay. And has the compliance issue hit the cannabis industry yet, or you think that it's coming down the line?
Well, I think some states are certainly doing it. And I think once it becomes federal, that you're going to see a lot more enforcement of those laws. And when they're coming in, and you look at, for instance, Massachusetts has a serious, they're saying that they're regulating how much water the cannabis facilities can use and what their flow rates are, and they're charging them accordingly for it. California has a big restriction now because of the droughts, that where you can get your water from. There was some articles saying that people are trucking water in for some of these facilities because of the droughts, and they're using the water. So it just goes back. It's not a finite resource, right? Any way we could capture it or to use it for a couple cycles, it's definitely in our best interest.
Right. Okay. All right. Al, is your is the work, or at least your operations, is it across the entire US, or are you concentrating in particular areas?
With the cannabis industry and agricultural, I'm pretty much on the East Coast right now. I've done some work on the West Coast. The company has worked, we've had installs from Canada to Hawaii.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, and once you've had an install, is there any customer interaction after that, or any upselling that occurs after that?
Well, all systems have to be cleaned periodically. We offer a service to clean the unit once a year. And if you do that, we warranty the system for 20 years. So, and what happens when there's a cleaning, we send a crew out there, we clean it, we replace anything that has to be replaced during that time, and then we put everything in the barrel and we dispose of it under state and federal guidelines. If that's deemed a non-haz waste that they're using. If not, we dispose it in a regular landfills.
Okay. All right, excellent. All right. And did you always want to be in the water reclamation industry?
No, I was in the construction business for a long time, and then I was, like I said, I was in the marine business, and then this evolved. It evolved out of necessity that I saw, and then I just sort of went into that lane, and it's been there for 27 years. Because I didn't really know about the environmental laws 27 years ago regarding runoff water. But once I had a problem with it, I'm like, okay, let's figure out a solution. And then, I've made a career out of it.
Excellent. Okay. And in your opinion, Al, what are the 5 most important traits or strengths or skills someone would need to work in the water reclamation industry, or to be successful in that industry?
Certainly the environmental laws, the knowledge in environmental laws. I think there's a construction, certainly one. Logistics. And then, just, I'll give you 3. How's that?
Who's the decision makers that you deal with within the cannabis operations?
Well, like I said, it goes up the supply chains, like the facility managers, one of the people that will reach out, he has a problem, and then I'll meet with him, and then we'll go up through the supply, the chain of command. But
right.
Mostly it's the head growers, the facility managers that are out like, well, look, we have a problem now.
Right. Okay. Okay. And so facility managers and the head growers that would identify that they'd have that problem. Is that correct?
Yeah. No, there's a handful of firms that are just specializing in the cannabis, or in interior agriculture space.
Mm-hmm. And just to reiterate, Al, what problems are those again?
The problems that they're facing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest thing is the runoff water, right? The contaminants that are running into the environment. And then if they're in the facility, where's the water going? They have to have some way to capture it. If they're just washing on a concrete floor, you have a lot of water, and what that does is just create mold and everything that they don't want inside that facility. So now you have a footprint that you're capturing the water in. You can treat anything that's won't go outside into your facility. So, everything is contained in one footprint. It's not going all over the place.
Okay.
That's a big part of it.
No, fantastic. And to make a distinction, it is interior agricultural space, not external field base.
I can do both. I've done both, because if they're taking it from the fields, they still have to wash whatever they're washing, the pots and the things, and it's the same thing, right? You can't run off. If they can reuse it for a period of time over and over again, fine. Like I did a design last year where they grow outside and inside. They're washing the pots that they use outside in the same facility, right? So they're worried about bringing what they have outside inside, that they could have the mice, the pests, the mites, and everything else that's associated with that type of cleaning. So they bring it into this the Geomat. It's get washed, it goes through the tanks. Once it hits a period of time, that water, we throw a switch and it goes back into their irrigation pond. So then they can use that water that was used in the wash cycle in their irrigation also. So I thought that was pretty slick, because they have the runoff ponds, but it's a way to get rid of the water after a fact once we reach that level.
Absolutely.
They all have the same problem, but each one's unique. And that's where I come in. Like I can make it any way you want it. It's not your typical concrete containment area. We can put it here, you can move it, I can make it any size you want. If you're washing this specific size table, I can make the unit to that table. So it's really energized me, and I'm really excited going forward in this.
Absolutely. All right. Typically, how much is a typical build or reclamation project?
The price point is pretty acceptable to most of the people that I've been working with. It's not like, oh, it's too expensive. That's fair market value for the service.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great, interesting angle that you come in at, because how much is versus the problems that you're solving? I mean, the problems of runoff water, contaminants, where your water's going. I mean, that could be $1 million problem. Is that kind of true?
Yeah, without a doubt. Look, 15 years ago, I got a call from a golf course, which is, I'm like, why are these guys calling? So I went out there.
I beg your pardon, you got a call from who?
A golf course.
Oh, yes, okay.
All right, so I'm not a golfer. So I'm like, what are they calling me for? So I took the meeting, I went up there, and I met the head maintenance and groundskeeper. And they walked me back there where they service all the equipment. And I'm like, all right, they're washing the equipment. He said, what happened was they have their tractors that they pull the plastic coats on that spray the greens, that use the pesticides on the greens. Well, they're washing them all out, and they needed a containment area. So I'm like, oh, you're washing them out? He goes, then I saw the monitoring pulse. I'm like, you got caught? He goes, yes. Because they were washing these things out for years in the same spot. So what was a little bit turned into a whole lot over a period of time. And they had a serious environmental problem. They had to do a remediation of all the dirt. So the state came in and they wanted them, and it was a huge fine. They had to do a containment area to capture all the water, and that's where I came in. I designed the containment area with the Geomat that they wash all the pesticides vehicles on. When they do a rinse out, or when they were mixing the chemicals, they had to be on secondary containment. So, that really opened my eyes to the pesticides angle of it.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to keep in touch.
All right, it was nice meeting you. I look forward to working with you.
Likewise, Al. Likewise. Have a great day further.
And you, bye.
Yes, thanks, man. Just goodbye.
Thank you so much for watching. If you found this information useful, please click the like button. And please subscribe to receive new information from the food and agribusiness industry. Thank you. Goodbye.